Everyone. My name is Tracy Creagh from Queensland University of Technology. I'm very lucky to work and live on the lands of the Turrbal and the Yagara First Nations owners of the beautiful city of Meanjin, Brisbane. In all the work I do, I pay my respect to First Nations owners and in particular elders past and present. And I honour their enduring connection to land, waters, community, culture and knowledge that spans over 2,000 generations. Also, as a member of Open Access Australasia, we are dedicated to learning from and working alongside Indigenous communities to ensure our work reflects the principles of Tino Rangatiratanga and Indigenous data sovereignty as defined by the communities themselves. So I'm also currently a co-convener of the Australian Diamond Journal Publishing Community of Practice, along with my amazing colleagues Caitlin Savage from Deakin University and Lucy Walton from Western Sydney University. Today, we're especially pleased to be working with Open Access Australasia to showcase the Open Journals Collective, a new initiative dedicated to sustaining Diamond Open Access journals. And so I'll now hand it over to Janet Catterall.
Thanks, Tracy. So welcome everybody. I'm not in Gimoy in Cairns today. I'm up on the Atherton Tablelands on Yamani country. So pay my respects to the Najanji and this beautiful country, which is actually cold and pouring with rain right now. I don't know if you can hear it in the background, but very excited to be hosting Tom today for this webinar. So Tom is, I'll just do a tiny bit of housekeeping. I think you will have heard when you came into the room that we're recording the session and we will have it on the Open Access Australasia website and on our YouTube channel. Could you please keep your mics muted unless you're asking a question? We'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. We have actually received some questions in advance. We circulated a document, and so we have those, but you are very, very welcome to put questions in the chat and we will collect them and go through them all after the presentation. So Tom Shaw is the Library Engagement Lead for the Open Journals Collective. He's a former academic librarian with experience across collections, open research, and digital innovation. He has worked for a range of UK universities, including King's College London, Lancaster University, and the University of East London. And I'm super excited to hear Tom's presentation. We had Caroline Edwards shared with us a video during Open Access Week last year before the Open Journal Collective had actually launched. Now it's live. It's been live for about 6 months, and Tom's here to let us know how it's all going. Thanks very much, Tom.
Thank you, and hello everyone. Thank you for the invitation to speak with you today. Great to have the opportunity to be here and to share with you everything that we're doing at the Open Journals Collective, and to now that we've launched, to be able to share with you, what we have done since my colleague Caroline last presented to you. So I'm just going to share some slides at this point, and I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of who we are, what our model is, how we operate. But I'm going to intersperse that a little bit with some of my own sort of personal reflections on things like my background as a librarian, how things are going in the UK context, which is where I'm speaking to you from today. So I'm based here in London, but working with libraries right around the world. So we are very much a global organisation and working with libraries everywhere. So I'm just going to share my screen. Could somebody just confirm they can see the slides okay? Great, thank you. So just to start off, I just wanted to take a moment to kind of reflect on my prior experience. So I started with the Open Journals Collective back in February this year. So I'm quite new to what is still a very new organisation. I'm a former academic librarian, and my career is very much, based in libraries, predominantly academic libraries. That is the sort of background that I come from. And I've been thinking quite a lot in recent months since I joined OJC about how things used to be and what were some of the kind of experiences that I had working in roles across areas like collections, like open research, thinking back to when I was head of collections at the University of East London. And I think there we had very big ambitions. We had quite a bold vision for where we really wanted scholarly publishing to be, where we wanted open access to be. But very little opportunity to effect the kind of change that we wanted to see, or that's certainly what it felt like at the time. So there were certain things that we invested in. So there were things like Knowledge Unlatched, for instance. There were opportunities to invest in certain things that felt a little bit different. At the same time, so much of our budget was it was eaten up by, our existing subscriptions, large packages. There was a certain science-based package that just kind of ate up enormous amounts of our budget and left very little space for other things. And other opportunities to try to build something different, to invest in other things, often felt quite piecemeal. They were great, but they were small, and that meant that they were, in a lot of senses, they kind of stayed on the periphery and weren't really able to bring alternative approaches to publishing and to open access into the mainstream. Also, when I was at Lancaster University working in roles in open research and open access, working with academics and authors there who wanted to engage with open access in different ways, wanted to publish their research in different and better ways, but the models for them to do that, simply not there, and there were numerous barriers that were in the way of us being able to do that. So I was at Lancaster at the time that Plan S first came out, at the time that transformative agreements first started to develop. So very much been through that experience of seeing what could herald major change, but also then some of the kind of obstacles to that from the major publishers, and also worked there at the time when the first mandates in the UK from research funders, from the Research Excellence Framework, which in the UK is the main government led program for research assessment that takes place about every 7 years. The first of the open access mandates that came in for that. They were quite a game changer in that context, something that really helped to make a substantial change in terms of open access. But again, the models to support that were not quite there. Very much the kind of opportunities were gold open access, APCs, those kind of models. So what I think is really different, and is really interesting here is that OJC, and what we're doing at OJC is trying to build something that is really allowing libraries to support diamond open access, a different form of open access. So no paywalls, no author fees, full and immediate open access, free to publish. But providing libraries with an opportunity to support that at scale. That's something, if I think back to those roles that I had over the last sort of 10 to 15 years, something that I wish had existed. And I'm saying this as not just the library engagement lead for the Open Journals Collective, but also saying that as a former librarian, something that I very much wish had existed, and something that I genuinely think has got huge amounts of potential to make the kind of change that I know so many of us really, really want to see. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about who we are at OJC, what our mission is, and what we're endeavouring to do. So, we are an international collective of scholars, libraries, university presses, non-profit publishers, and our vision is very much around academic research being available to all, no author fees, no paywalls, and very much building a sustainable future for academic journals that is a direct challenge to the major global commercial publishers, the kind of prevailing systems that are very much still in place. And in so doing, what we're really trying to do is build a big deal, you might say, for libraries to invest in Diamond Open Access. So a big deal that is every bit as comprehensive, every bit as as good in terms of quality and integrity, but something that has a very different ethos, built on a very different set of values, and with a very different business model and operating model that is behind it. And we're really trying to ultimately build something that provides libraries with an exit ramp from the world of transformative agreements, setting out a pathway where, if I think back to again the kind of things I was grappling with as head of collections at the University of East London, providing that future pathway to actually take our spend, take our budget, and ultimately do something very, very different with it. I think it's worth highlighting at this point as well, that we are not a publisher ourselves, so we don't publish any content, we don't host any content ourselves. We work with an existing range of publishing partners, an existing range of journals. So really what we're trying to do is not set ourselves up as another Diamond Open Access publisher, but really try to supercharge, you might say, what's already there, provide that with support, provide that with investment from libraries to really kind of bring that together and bring that into the mainstream. So a little bit of the detail here about how our OJC offer works. So we're really looking to bring libraries together to raise collective investment, ultimately for that transition to academic-led, non-profit Diamond Open Access. And we do that through our library membership program, which is open to all libraries globally. We have a mix of different types of journal that we work with, and I'll come on to say a little bit more about that in just a moment. But as you can see in the center of the screen there, in the current year, we'll be supporting, it's actually just under currently 300 Diamond Open Access journals. And we also have a target to flip 25 journals away from commercial and subscription models in the first 12 months. We've got a target for next year to do the same thing. So there are different routes for journals to reach our collections and be eligible for our support. Whether they are already published Diamond Open Access, whether they're born Diamond, you might say, or whether they are being transitioned into a Diamond model from other types of publishing. And ultimately, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen there, there are kind of really three ways that we're endeavouring to deliver our vision. Firstly, offering that really viable alternative to transformative agreements, giving control back to libraries, back to academic communities, and really trying to rebalance things from the major global commercial publishers. Secondly, that whole sense of flipping high quality journals into our collections, not just working with what is already Diamond, providing a really tangible route for journals that are published through other models and in other forms, to have an opportunity to come into our collections and be supported in that way. And thirdly, leveraging our academic networks. And this really connects up with something that I will be speaking about in a later slide around our our culture as an organisation, our community governance, the way that we are, we are academics, we're librarians, we're small non-profit publishers. That's who makes up AuSCCoP. And we're really endeavouring to, to kind of bring those powerful networks together and to work together in, a really collaborative and partnership-driven way. I'm just going to say a bit now about our library members who have signed up to our library membership program and where we are in terms of that. So, really, really pleased to say that we recently reached our 50% of our year one target for investment that you can see on the screen there. We've got 36 library members now globally. That has helped us to reach the 52% that we're currently at. So we've got 16 in the US, 18 in the UK, one in the Netherlands, and delighted to say that we have in recent days been joined by our first member in Australia. So RMIT are in the process of joining us, which we're really excited about. Currently in the process of bringing them into the AuSCCoP community. Which is fantastic news. And, we are really excited about being able to work with further library members around the world and absolutely in Australasia as well. We have, in terms of routes for libraries to join us, libraries can join us individually. But we're also really keen on offering our library membership program through different consortial routes as well. So we've got two deals in place currently. So a deal in place with CRL in North America and a deal in place with JISC in the UK. We're in discussions with about 7 more consortia currently at different stages and kind of different levels of discussion, but we're really, really interested in basically bringing offers to libraries, opportunities to join up through relevant consortial organisations wherever they are in the world. I just wanted to say a little bit at this point about a couple of further things. So one of those, the way in which what we are doing is really resonating with libraries currently, and that's something that I found personally really inspiring and really positive. So I think pretty much every library that I have spoken to, wherever they are in the world, has they've really understood the vision. It is something that has resonated with them. They've talked so often about the way that what we're trying to do and the vision, the strategy, the aspirations that they have in their library to support and further open access is really well aligned. But not just that, it's been great to see how many libraries have been able to kind of turn that positivity into reality and to be able to clinch arrangements and to put things into place to come on board and to become members with us. I very much don't underestimate how challenging that has been for a lot of libraries, and I'm conscious it's very easy for me to sit here and say, here is the solution. This is the pathway away from transformative agreements. It's another thing entirely, of course, for libraries to reach agreement internally, to be able to get stakeholders together and on board and bring everybody together to to be able to join up, and particularly to find the funding and the investment to be able to do that in circumstances that, of course, for so many are really challenging at the moment in terms of budgets, really challenging at the moment in terms of the the geopolitical environments around the world, the kind of challenges that we are all working with. So it has been great to see that, and we look forward to welcoming many more libraries, but certainly don't underestimate the challenges that libraries are currently facing in terms of being able to to change the way that they utilize their budgets, to manage and cope with budget cuts, and things of that nature that so many are working through at the current time. I also just wanted to say a little bit as well about the UK context, because although we are a global organisation and working with libraries around the world, um, a lot of our members are based in the UK, and I know there's interest in what is happening here in the country that I'm based in. So there's a lot of challenge around budgets. A lot of people in the UK really feeling the squeeze and facing a lot of challenge around budget cuts. There are various things that is resulting in. So there are a couple of examples and potentially more of mergers in the UK sector. So quite a lot that is happening currently that is posing challenges. There are signs, though, of libraries really embracing change. So there are a number of instances, including some libraries who have publicly committed to this and publicly advertised this, who are walking away from some transformative agreements. Some who are using that as opportunities to invest in different things and to think very differently about how they utilize their budgets. The way in which libraries are kind of managing that situation, a lot of libraries in the sector in the UK have put into place rights retention policies to support academics in retaining the intellectual property to their work, and supporting that in terms of libraries being able to then do things like making research available immediately with no embargo through institutional repositories, and coupling that with using tools such as Rapid ILL, other types of similar tool for resource sharing as well. So it's early days, but that's a little bit of a flavour of what is going on, certainly for some libraries in the UK, who are looking at, as I say, moving away from some of the transformative agreements that they may have had previously. So I'm just going to cover now a few more of the practical details. A few more of the practical details. So you can see on the screen there, these are the collections that we have currently. So there are three options for libraries. So they can opt to invest in our multidisciplinary collections. So that is the full 279 titles. They can opt to invest in our arts, humanities, and social sciences titles. So that's 199 of those titles, or in our STEM collection, which is 80 of those titles. There is a standard membership tier for libraries, and that's based on university size by student FTE. And there are then higher tier rates available at bronze, silver, gold, platinum for libraries who would like to support us at a higher rate and have budget available to do so. And the member benefits are the same for libraries. It just gives a pathway for libraries to be able to support us at a higher level, should they be in a position to be able to do so. Just on the screen there, you can see a few examples of our publishing members. So there may be some there that might be familiar to you. So there are a number of university presses, including some in North America, some in the UK, some in continental Europe. Not all university presses, so we've got other types of non-profit publishers such as Pluto Journals, Pluto Press, for instance. We have quite recently done a call for new publishing partners to join us as well. So we have a number of organisations we anticipate in the coming months bringing into the OJC community, and we would anticipate future rounds of open calls for more publishing partners to join us as well. What we're currently working through is what the right balance for that is. So making sure that we we grow our collections, we're in a position to bring more journals on board. But of course, that we don't grow too quickly, and that we grow in a way that is proportionate to the amount of income that we've got, ensuring that we can give a sustainable amount and level of funding to our journals. Just quickly, I'm going to show a few of the collections highlights that we have. And one of the things I think it is worth pointing out here is in terms of the graphic design for cover images, those kind of things that for small non-profit journals are sometimes out of reach. That is very much one of the things that we're really wanting to try to address by our sources of funding that are available to journals is trying to give everybody access to the kind of things that either rely so often on voluntary labour or are simply out of reach and are the kind of things that are the preserve of the major commercial publishers. So, we would want journals in our collections all to have, access to graphic design for these kind of cover images. And as I say, OJC funding is something that we would really like to be able to help with that. Just a few examples here from our STEM collections as well. We are really focused on building up our STEM titles just as much as the arts and humanities and social sciences titles, and we do have more of those currently and fewer of the STEM titles, which is partly perhaps a consequence of more of the existing Diamond Open Access publishing having happened in the arts and the humanities disciplines, but we are very much, a multidisciplinary operation and collections. So, really looking to grow our collections, as I say, across STEM just as much as across other disciplines as well. I just want to cover a little bit now about the exact way in which our funding model works. So, a question that we get very often is from libraries who already support Diamond Open Access through a different kind of library membership model. So the Open Library of Humanities is a key example there. There's the program that is operated through Erudit in Canada is another example. And they're really cases where we have journals that those organizations publish that are part of our collections. So naturally, the question is very often, well, if we're supporting this, do we need to continue supporting because they're in the OJC collections? What we have done with the OJC funding model is to design that very specifically around and to complement and to fit around existing sources of funding that journals may receive. So if a journal already gets funding to cover the basics from a program such as the Open Library of Humanities, they will just be eligible for a small amount of top-up funding from the OJC. If a journal gets no funding, as you can see from the visualization on the screen, they will get a full package of funding. That does come with a caveat that we can't always promise to be able to provide 100% of what a journal may tell us that they require, because that is dependent on how much we are receiving through our income from a library membership. But this is the way in which we would make decisions about the level of funding that individual journals receive. And for this reason, supporting OJC is very much not duplication with supporting other types of library membership model where we have some of their journals in our collections. It's not double dipping, it's not duplication, and we've designed things very carefully to ensure that is not the case. And understandably, that's a really key question that libraries have had and something that they are naturally very, very concerned about. A little bit now about our funding model and our revenue distribution model. So essentially the way that we work is that our income comes from our library membership, from the fees that our members pay to join us. There is a very small amount of funding that is taken for overheads for running us as an organisation. We are deliberately very lean, keeping those costs as low as possible, and we are also exploring other avenues for grant funding to cover those costs. So if we are successful in doing that, that would ultimately mean that 100% of the library membership is available for distribution to journals. And that is ultimately the model that the income comes from our library membership. And that money is then paid out to our journals to support them and to support their operations. And that ultimately is the business model for us. There are a number of things that we utilize as factors in making the decisions about how we fund the journals in our collections, how much they receive. One of those, going back to the previous slide, is what are their existing sources of funding? Are there any existing sources of funding? And how much do they already receive? Another factor, as you can see on the left, so one of the columns there in the table is number of articles per year. So we look at the volume, the size of the publishing output of each of the journals, and that's another factor that's taken into account in terms of deciding how much income an individual journal will receive from us. The process for all of this will be overseen by librarians from our member libraries. So we're in the process of establishing a funding committee that will comprise solely librarians, and that is a very deliberate decision not to have members of our publishing partners or journals involved in that process, really for reasons of avoiding conflicts of interest or perceived conflicts of interest, having as much independence and transparency as possible. That will be something that will be very much overseen and led by the librarians from our community. And in terms of how journals can join us, there are a number of different ways to that. So, one of those is through being published by our existing publishing partners. We are currently working with our partners to determine which of their journals they want to put forward this year for nomination to join our collections. We will then make decisions about how many of those we can afford to bring on board. But we also hope to be able to open applications for journals to join us individually outside of our existing publishing partners and to provide a route there. And there is also, of course, that target of flipping 25 titles this year from other forms of publishing into Diamond Open Access. And as you can see in the middle of the screen there are different routes. There are basically three different routes to titles joining us. So titles can apply to join us independently as self-published titles. They can apply to join OJC with their current publisher or scholarly association, or they can apply to join OJC and state in their application that they're looking to partner with a current OJC publisher. So those are all scenarios that could apply to existing Diamond titles that want to join our collections, or they could apply to titles that are interested in flipping to a Diamond model from a different and commercially published form of model. So a title flipping could choose to join us independently, for instance. They could choose to completely go it alone. They could choose to, or they could elect to find a new publishing home, and we would then look to, kind of join them up with an existing Diamond Open Access publisher from our OJC community. There's a little bit more now about that whole process of journal flipping, and on the right hand side you can see a little bit of a pathway mapping out how this would look. There are some of our publishing partners, so the Open Library of Humanities is a case in point, who have a lot of experience with doing this previously. It's really twofold in terms of what we offer to journals who want to go through this process. So Firstly, funding for this, so a package of funding to cover the process of migration. Very often there will be extensive back files to migrate. There will be migration to a new publishing platform. There'll be many things involved in the practical side of making that transition, that move to a new publishing venue happen. But also, just as important in terms of how we will support journals is the kind of support in terms of the contacts, the networking, the mentorship that they might require. So, understandably, a lot of our publishing partners talk with editors and editorial boards who are very unhappy with their existing commercial publishing homes, but are very nervous about what a move to a different and new form of publishing, with a different publishing partner, moving away from what in a lot of cases may be a very long-standing publisher, very nervous about what that might look like. So we can partner them up with editors who've been through that process before, to help to guide and mentor them through that. There's a little bit more about our library membership program here, and just as an illustration, you can see our costs for that on the right-hand side. We currently offer pricing in US dollars, in euros, and in pound sterling. And that is something that is available in our brochure on our websites. As I mentioned earlier, there are a variety of different options to select from, and you can see those set out in the table there. So there are the higher tier memberships that are available, the three different collections, and pricing for multi-year as well. So libraries can join us for a single year commitment or a commitment for up to 3 years, but that will be billed individually on a year by year basis. I'm just going to say a little bit now about the member benefits, and I think this is the other main thing that really distinguishes us from the offer from the major global commercial publishers, is what we want the experience to be like for our library members. So if I kind of think back to again to my experience of being a librarian working in collections, you would pay an invoice, and not in every case, of course, but quite likely you wouldn't hear anything from that publisher until 11 months time, when it's time to think about paying another invoice. And what we're trying to build is, it's really the opposite of that, where we want to work with our library members as partners, as collaborators, to work with them side by side. We want to bring our library members very much into our collective governance structure. That's something that's been modelled with the Open Book Collective, who we have worked with very closely in designing OJC, and we have a memorandum of understanding with them, and we collaborate with them very closely. There is a library board that is part of our collective governance structure, and that is something that all library members currently would get a seat on. And there are also a range of really vibrant working groups, so loads of opportunity for library members to come on board and work with us, be part of running the organisation, be part of our future direction and our future strategy, and have a really clear and tangible voice in all of that. As I mentioned earlier, opportunities to serve on our funding board, our finance board, to oversee that funding and how it's allocated to journals. And also things like there'll be a yearly report detailing our activities, and things like a listing on the OJC website as a member. We really like to do a press release for all of our new members, and we would love to really celebrate and share and publicise our library members so that they can benefit just as much as we do from that visibility. Just to wrap up now in the final slide, I'm just going to say a tiny bit about our community structure and some of the other elements of that. And something that I really want to kind of pick out here is in the center, our impact dashboards. So This is a project that we're currently in the early stages of to build an open dashboard primarily designed for librarians, but not just librarians, so it will be fully open access, but to provide access to a wide range of data and metrics about OJC's journals. So a question that we get asked naturally by libraries an awful lot is um, how many of my faculty in my institution have published in OJC journals? What are the papers that they have published? What's the usage like? What are the publication rates like in the country that I'm based in? Those kind of questions. The impact dashboard will be the source to answering those questions and providing that kind of visibility of quantitative impact evidence, both for libraries who are interested in membership and need to build a case for that, but also for existing libraries to be able to see, what's the impact of their investment, where is it that their funding is going. That is a collaborative piece of work with the Open Book Collective. So we're utilising that community structure and community governance approach, to work very closely with our library board, work very closely with our partner organisations like the Open Book Collective to do this. So those are they're the main points that I wanted to share today. And I hope that has been a useful overview in terms of who we are at OJC, what our mission is, how we operate, and what our offer is for libraries. If this is of interest, whether that is something that you think could be a good fit for your library, or whether are just interested in having a further conversation, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd be delighted to talk further. I know we've got a little bit of time now for questions, but I would be absolutely delighted to talk with you and your colleagues at your library, and would love to arrange a video call with you to talk further if that is of interest. But I will stop sharing at this point, and I think we've got a few minutes left, I hope, for some questions.
Thanks so much, Tom. That was really, really good. And very inspiring. I just find this initiative so inspiring. I love that you started off by saying this is the alternative big deal that's actually based on the values that we got into our areas in the first place. So it's really great to hear the detail. I had a lot of questions. You answered a lot of them in your presentation, and we have a lot. Both from the chat and that were pre-asked in our document. So I'm going to get through them, as many of them as we possibly can. I'm going to start off with a question about advocacy, which was submitted before the webinar. It's actually part of a multi-pronged question. I'm just going to take the advocacy piece for now. And it says, how do we effectively advocate for this move to a different paradigm? And do you have any ideas for celebrating our successes?
Yeah, I think the move is it's clearly a really substantial one, and as I said in the presentation, I'm I'm conscious that it's very easy for me to sit here and say, yes, here's the answer. It's a big deal for Diamond Open Access. It's an exit ramp from transformative agreements, and I know turning that into reality for libraries is, I know there are a lot of challenges along the way. Not just practical challenges around finances, around budgets, but also that whole sense of moving to, as the question suggests, moving to a very different paradigm, a very different way of doing academic publishing, and very conscious that is really tied up with all of the questions and considerations around where authors want to publish, around the prestige attached to venues of publication. So I guess our approach to that is multifold. And we're looking at currently how we can support our library members in terms of their advocacy internally within their organizations for Diamond Open Access. So we're looking at the what are the kind of supporting materials we can develop for them. What are the opportunities for, and obviously I'm just one person, but as far as there is capacity for me to do this, how can I join them in, some of the meetings that they might be having with their academics and their departments? What are the opportunities for us as an organization to run, events, things of that nature for academics and not just for librarians to support and advocate for Diamond as an alternative paradigm for publishing. I think part of this is it's also that whole notion of flipping titles, of recognizing that there are titles, whether we like it or not, that have currency with authors that are desirable venues of our publication, and as many of those as we can flip into a diamond model, we would want to do so. Obviously, there are a lot of journals in the world, and there are only very small amounts that we are able to do. But I think that is a small and incremental part of how we can affect this sort of change as well. I guess in terms of how we can celebrate that, would love to work with both our library members within the OJC, to look at how we can kind of celebrate and promote and build a sense of community around that, but also how we can do that with partner organisations as well. Where our kind of whole ethos is very much we want to partner with other organisations within this space. So like Open Access Australasia, for instance, we want to work with all of the bodies in this kind of ecosystem in a really collaborative way. So we would want to, we'd want to look at any opportunities for working together to be able to kind of celebrate the successes as we affect that kind of change.
Thank you. Hey, I was just thinking, Tracy, do you want to take the questions from the chat and I'll take the ones that were asked before, and then we can kind of go back and forth? Does that sound like a plan?
That
Just
sounds
want to
great.
try to cover as many questions as we can. But thank you for that answer. And it also speaks to a couple of, it's very close to a couple of the questions that we received on adjacent topics as well, your answer. So what do you reckon, Tracy?
Yeah, I guess advocacy is a big thing in terms of what we're trying to do down here in Australia and New Zealand, is just create a big problem that we have here is visibility for our diamonds. So we know we have a good number of diamonds, but they don't get that sort of, I guess, they don't rise to the top. So I quite like the idea of your impact dashboard and collecting metadata across the journals to sort of showcase, what's actually happening. Is I guess the default question that we're getting in the chat really is, and there's a great one here from Jane. Does Tom have any advice about how to encourage researchers to select Diamond open access journals, especially when they are so driven by the rankings, so the Q1, the Q2, the metrics, etc. Going back to visibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I would say is, I would acknowledge that can be a challenge, and I'm thinking about my own experience of working with researchers in that respect, and I can't pretend to have any kind of immediate easy answers to that. I think I think there are numerous things that can help, and I think part of that is perhaps individually understanding what might resonate with that researcher, and is there an argument that may resonate with them around perhaps the ethical side of publishing, The way in which Diamond presents the potential for something that is more equitable, something that is a kind of far better fit, in that respect for the academic world. Or it may be if it is something, if it is somebody where that kind of thing is just not going to fly. What are some of the other arguments around, you know, is there data around increased visibility that could be cited? For instance, are there any examples from that discipline that could be drawn upon in terms of journals that have migrated from commercial publishing to diamond publishing, where that's within the same discipline for that researcher? It's a topic of conversation that we had in the UK at a panel I was on a while ago at an event for Research Libraries UK. And this was something that we were continuing to look at, that very strong held sense of attachment of venue of publication that can make advocating for Diamond so challenging. So there is a bit of a working group around that in the UK that we're looking at setting up, and I know there are some colleagues who are involved in doing that. So yeah, there are some ideas, but I do acknowledge it can be a really challenging thing at the kind of author level to continue to advocate for.
And it's interesting. I was doing a bit of work with Dora last week, and there's a number of questions that have come in that are all around that whole, oh, how do we do this when metrics are the way they are, research assessment reform kind of side of things, both in the chat and in the document. I just wondered if have you thought about alliances or anything, or trying to work with Dora and Koara at all? I know it's sort of adjacent to what you're doing, but it's all part of that cultural, changing the culture problem.
Definitely. I mean, I think the stage we're at now is, after our formal launch as an organisation in January, where the last few months we've been focusing on kind of building the basics of the organisation, getting the basic operation in place, and we're now at a place where I think we can start to look at that future strategy around, what, who are the other organisations as we build OJC into something that is really tangible. Who are the organisations we'd want to partner with, and absolutely working with people like Dora. I think we definitely need to be looking at it exactly those kind of things. And I think it would be a mistake for us if we were just to be looking at people who are involved in open access publishing and Diamond open access publishing, and not considering what's going on in those adjacent areas, what's going on in the space that Dora are working in, that other organisations around research assessment are working in. I think there is some really important join up. Not something that we are actively currently involved in, but yes, very much. I think they're exactly the kind of organisations we need to be working with really closely. And reflecting back to some of the previous questions, I think working with those kind of organisations will be key to us in terms of how we continue to address some of those questions around prestige attached to venues of publication, around how we can continue to kind of build and advocate for diamond routes, diamond venues of publishing as ones where we want researchers to publish.
Thank you. Tracy, is there anything
Yeah, there's
from you?
just a quite a good practical question in terms of when the journals are applying for funding. Do they have to specify, Tom, what the funding is for?
They do, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and that is so the the first tranche of funding has not yet been given to our journals. So in future years, they will receive a number of allotments, of funding throughout a year. What will happen this year is it's likely to just be a single payment towards the end of the year, and we're currently just designing the exact processes for journals to go through for the funding allocation. That will be quite detailed in terms of what the funding is used for, but also reporting back that will be required from the journals in terms of how did they spend. You asked for this. How did you actually spend it? What was the impact of that? What did that enable you to do that you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise? So that will be not a we're conscious of the kind of the small amounts of resource a lot of our journals have, so it will not be a hugely onerous process, but there will very much be a requirement to be really clear about what they spent the money on. And
Yeah.
also, that's something we really want to have to be able to share with our library members so that they can see, another strand to where is their money gone? What are the things that money was spent on? What's been the positive impact for the journals that they're supporting, and giving them some, I guess, some more kind of narrative-based evidence from the journals around, what's been the impact of the funding that the libraries have given us.
Um, can we have room for another question, Jenna? I know we're running up.
Yeah.
There's just one in which is I'm really interested in is so for university libraries, like for example, where I work, that publish our own journal, diamond journals, would they be considered a library or a publisher member? And if library members could, um, would their journals apply for support as well? So they could be a member, but they could also apply for support for their journals.
Um, that's a really interesting and it's a very timely question because I've spoken to a number of libraries in recent weeks who've asked exactly that they they're a library, but they are also engaged in a form of either the library acting as a diamond publisher, or they're very engaged in some university-based diamond publishing. So the diamond pub, that part of the publishing operation would it's the library who would be the member,
Yeah.
and not the publishing part of the operation. It would depend really on what the setup is. So if it's a fully fledged university press, then potentially they will be eligible to join us as a publishing partner. If it is a part of the library but not a separate entity, that's probably an area where it would be more appropriate for us to have a discussion with them about, what would the right thing be. We don't at the current time have a route for libraries to join and also then automatically get financial support for the journals that they publish
Right.
or the journals that they are involved in publishing. But we are increasingly being asked that question, and I think understandably that's a very reasonable one for libraries to have. I can absolutely see part of their motivation for joining would be, well, how can I support my journals financially? We're constantly looking at and reflecting on our setup and going forward how we operate as an organization, and I can't guarantee that would result in changes that would enable us to be able to kind of offer that specifically, but it's certainly an important point we're really aware of. We certainly will take that into our ongoing analysis and decision making about how we operate as an organization. If there are any libraries that are in that situation, I'd love to have a conversation with them, and it would be great to hear from their perspective some of the specifics of what they might be looking for. As I say, that's not something that we currently offer, and we've no immediate plans to offer that. But we do want to very much listen to and to hear from library members in the community in terms of the requirements they have and the kind of things that they would be looking for from their perspective.
That's great. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tom. I see that we have actually come to the end of time. I could talk about this for another hour quite easily, but I should probably let everyone go. And thank you so much, Tom, for joining us so early, UK time as well. We really appreciate it. It's been just fascinating. And I'm sure we didn't get to all the questions, but possibly I could compile them and send them in email if you had time to have a look at them.
Yeah, please do. I'd be really happy to respond to further questions we've not had a chance to get through. And if anybody is interested in having a further conversation, I'd love to hear from you, and please feel free to reach out.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone for coming as well. I know, and certainly if anyone's here from Aotearoa, it's quite late for you,
Right.
but yeah, thank you. It's been really, really good to hear about the Open Journal Collective, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more and continuing the conversation. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.